Ready to go here. And what I've done is I've taped down a sheet of paper. I am still using that lovely 140-pound hot press paper because I like the way my pencil works on it. It's nice and bright. 11 by 17 is also fine, whatever surface that you like drawing on. And I've also prepared by recreating a thumbnail that represents the plan. And I have created the elevation and then a thumbnail of the perspective from that elevation. And then what I have to do is figure out what kind of space my perspective is going to occupy. So it's all a matter of scale. So in other words, what I've done really quickly with tracing paper, really great trick as well whenever you're in doubt, was I decided to use the 3/4 inch scale in that it will allow me, when I create my 8-foot by 8-foot wall, it will still provide enough space to provide information. He's very bored today, my poor puppy, and without being too weeny on the overall page. So I had to do this to figure out, oh my gosh, where am I going to put my ground line? So I am going to run my ground line right here, but I'll use my 8-foot measure to help me establish that. So here I go, I've got my scale out, and I want to make sure that I've got enough room that I'm going to leave some space here. So if I start my ground line right about here, I should be okay, because that will take me up to there. So I'll try not to use my hand as I run across the page. I'm going to switch to my drafting lead here, just because I do want to get this nice and sharp. And all we're going to do at this stage is draft the grid on there. So at a reasonable place, drawing your ground line. And this is going to, as we know, it's 8 by 8, so it will end up as a square. So a good time to get out your 45-degree triangle. This will come in very, very handy. So somewhere within here, I'm going to start my 8 by 8 grid. And I'm only going to tick off, here we go here. It's on our line. There's the start of it. It will end here. And I might just move it over ever so slightly because I don't want it to, we're going to hear my dog growl pretty soon again. There we go, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Those are just ticks on that line. And I'm now going to draw the height of that back wall. And in the 2-foot increments, I'm not breaking it down into 1 foot because I find too many lines will just clutter it. So as we did before, I'm just going to draw a guideline, diagonal line up to the top there. And I did not need to measure at all. I didn't need to make those ticks, however. And then I will extend vertically from each of those measurements, keeping in mind that these are 2-foot increments here, like so. And you can see I'm going fairly light at this stage. And now what I can do as well, it's not critical I do it quite at this point, but I may as well, because I've got my all of my equipment ready at the go here, because the next step will be determining where that vanishing point is. And a vanishing point is typically related to our eye level. So if you want to see the tops of a lot of things, then our eye level is higher. On the other hand, if you want to see more of a ceiling, then we would drop our eye level. But I'm purposely going to make an eye level at 5 feet. And you should actually measure how high your eye level is, and maybe that becomes your new standard. But truly, I did not have to measure this. I could have just said that, knowing that if I were to just do something like this between 4 and 6, unit 4 and unit 6, this is my eye level right here. Anywhere on this eye level, a vanishing point can live. And I look at my thumbnail over here, and I purposely put it in between where the pyramid and the octagonal prism were going to end up so that I could kind of see both sides of it. So in this instance, I have it more or less, I've got it 2, 4, almost 5 units over, pretty much where I have it right there. So, but I'm not. I'm actually going to tuck it over here just a little bit. And this now is the established point which every other element in perspective will be drafted. So at this stage, if you want, you can darken your ground line just a little bit. It gives you sort of a sense of, that's ground zero right there. And now what I'm going to do is take my set square and vanish through each of those points to start creating that grid. So just aligning it carefully, still going as light as possible through those points. Try to be as accurate as possible as well. And I would caution you to not put your vanishing point directly on any of these lines, because it'll just end up being a straight up and down line. And we want to have a sort of a sense of, I guess, we're composing our drawing. We're actually figuring out how that view is looking. And I just made a slight adjustment to that point so it was more accurate. Okie doke. You had nothing to guess here. Everything was measured until now. There is no way that you can now take your scale and say, this is now 8 feet. You can't do that in perspective. What you have to do is judge a depth that represents 8 feet. And I have on purpose been using squares in my grids, and later on I'll show you how to not rely on completely a square. But I'm going to say that the extent, or the foot, the very front of my perspective is going to be about here. And you heard that slight hesitation in my voice because I was assessing it. So if I actually deem it to be here, what was I doing? I was just making sure that this did not feel distorted. At the same time, I didn't want to come too far down to the margin here so that my drawing would be crowded. I know if I were to put tracing paper over top of here, my pyramid's going to end up this high, so I'm still not crowding the layout up here. Now what we need to do is to create these horizontal lines. We don't have to guess anymore. This line was our only guess whatsoever. So to create those horizontal lines, now what we do is do exactly what we did before, running a diagonal from corner to corner, and where they hit, we can draw a vertical line. So I'm going to go from corner to corner, and where that each line hits, from here to this point here, this point here, and this point here, I can now draw a horizontal line, and I'm drafting this. In days past, I had students do this freehand, but I've become much nicer. And this is now a drafted grid. And I like doing this for first time around now, just because I think you know it's good to have an aid to begin with, but hopefully later on when you do your vignettes, you won't rely on your drafting equipment anymore. So now that I've got my grid established, I'm going to darken it, and then I'm going to put vellum over top of this just to make it easier to see how perspectives are constructed.